Hello dears, Natalie, Locke here. See, I had it. And I hope, and if you're cute, and if you're, and you can change the words that's used, even where I might have a chance of stereotype my version of episode noon. Need my glasses. Alright. Hello dears, Natalie Locke here with episode 92 of Write the Story, where I give you a prompt in 10 words out of this book, link down below, and I put myself out there and show you how I outline and write the story in hopes that you'll be able to write your own story, maybe contrast and compare, learn something new, or go, hey, I'm not going to do that, which still counts as learning, by the way. The way I normally do this, I take 5-10 minutes to outline, and then I take 20 minutes, sometimes it takes longer, to write the story. If this is the first time that you've done flash fiction, I highly recommend you don't set any time limit whatsoever. But I do recommend following the absolute 100% non-negotiable rule of flash fiction, which is it must be under 1,000 words. Everything else is up to you. Let me go ahead and give you episode 92's prompt and 10 words. The prompt is based on a true story. The words to include are Mongols, exception, gosling, elementary, coordinate, solution, titan, shuffle, horseshoe, and universe. Because the prompt wasn't what I would call a true prompt. There's other prompts through this book, and if you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll know what I'm talking about, but these prompts are like actually set an idea in your mind. This prompt came across more like a challenge, which is based on a true story. Well, I couldn't think of anything. Of course, immediately I did the most writer thing and I drew a blank. I had no clue. But here is a tip on if you're ever drawing a blank with flash fiction or what have you. Look up news stories. News stories are already limited number of words. They get to the point, explain the information they got, answer the who, what, when, where, why. Sometimes they can even answer the how, and you got a story. And you can fill in the gaps, fill in the setup, and be inspired through those stories. I have done it a number of times with my flashes where I might have gotten inspiration from a news story, but what actually came of the story was completely different, or at least varied enough from the news story that I don't have to pay royalties to anybody, and that's the goal. So I did the exact same this time. Reading off the 10 words, I was thinking I wanted a situation where I got in my mind a woman defending herself. So quick Google search, and I got really touched when I found this story about a woman who, right as she was pumping gas, her car started to drive off because someone had gotten into the driver's seat and her kids were inside, and she was able to get in, and by this point I stopped reading, but she was able to get in. There was a scuffle or something and she was able to save herself and the kids. So I stopped reading about that point when she got in the vehicle and something went her way to save herself and the kids. Then I wrote the outline. I had that same setup. Let's have this character pumping gas and then her car starts to go away. But I was thinking, what is one of the most annoying things about cars these days when you're pumping gas? And how could someone use that to their advantage and steal your car? Well, when the gas tank is on the passenger side of the car, kind of opens up the driver's side for someone to just hop in, and if your keys are already in the ignition, it's gone. Like, there's not much quick reaction that you can do. That's where I went with this, and that's where I started. From there, I decided to go with that and say that the gas tank being on the passenger side was the worst design in the universe, and I stand to that even outside of this fictional story. But it was also gave me a chance to work the coordinated word that I had to include. Now, I put it as past tense just because I was writing in past tense, and you can change the words as you see fit, but for me, this was the moment in the story where I was like, it's like the assailant had coordinated with her movement, so they knew exactly when the driver's side was going to be free and exactly when she was going to be preoccupied with the pump itself, so it would slow down her reaction. For elementary, in my mind, one of the kids was elementary school age, Horseshoe. I had fun with this. I decided to use a cliche, but use it as an argument. The cliche is only close counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. And it's because at the end of the whole ordeal, a lot of people told the main character, oh, that was close. In her mind, close still felt like a grenade had gone off in her hands. Just the close was too much for her. And I really enjoyed that line because a lot of times we think of, oh, well, this could have happened without recognizing what did happen. And I guess that's kind of the theme of what happened with this story. That, and also, can we keep the gas tank on the driver's side? I'm just saying. I decided to call the kids goslings. One, because I had to use the word, but two, just because I thought it was a cute way to change it up and how sweet they were being. For Shuffle, there was a shuffle. Once she was able to get in the front seat, she is trying to fight with the guy that is in her front seat. And then this is where I'm not really happy with this. This might be my least favorite line, but because one of the words was Mongols, I decided that the main character, in her mind, because we were kind of third person acute, in her mind, this burly man was pretty much like Genghis Khan invading her world. And so she is able to grab a gun from her purse and defend against the Mongols. So I was kind of going through a historical reference there, but honestly, I don't like it. I don't like to talk about a race or ethnicity that I don't really know much about, or even where I might have a chance of stereotyping them. I didn't feel comfortable with it, and I'm just sharing that with y'all because it is a draft. There will be editing, but I can tell you that's probably one of the first things that gets cut once I get through the editing phase. For exception, kind of the opening mindset of every woman, if they do find themselves in a bad situation, they hope to be the exception of the victim statistics, the one that got away. And I actually really like that line because we may think of bad scenarios over and over, but we also don't want to be in those scenarios. And if we do find ourselves in the scenarios, the second dream hope is we're able to get out because we thought about it so much. The next line is, for Titan, there's a situation where a hand is on the main character's throat and it tightens. And I'll leave it at that. The last line is solution, ended up staying the same, and it was kind of a funny solution, but at the same time a not so funny solution. So, yeah, that's all 10 words, and all the 10 words stayed the same. But as I've already said, editing is going to change this completely, but here is my version of episode 92 in draft format. Lots of editing to be done. The hope is that it doesn't happen, but if it does, women's truly hope. They're the exception to the victim statistics. It was well after the sun had gone down, which isn't hard during the winter. Both kids were in the back seat as they headed with their mother home from Grandma's. It was the final day of break before starting back to preschool and elementary school tomorrow. The gaslight came on. Damn it, Brooke muttered. She glanced in the rear view, ensuring she didn't wake the goslings. She smiled as a street lamp illuminated their closed eyes, only for a moment. Pulling into the next gas station, Brooke turned off the car but kept the keys in the ignition. She got out and walked around to the pump that was idiotically placed on the passenger side of the vehicle, the worst placement of the gas tank known to the universe. She paid and turned to insert the pump when the car started. Her brow furrowed, but instantly became raised when the vehicle shifted. She yanked the pump out, allowing gravity to slam it to the ground. Leaping to the passenger side door, she yanked it open while trying to jump run into the vehicle as the speed increased. Her legs were pulled in right before the car jerked to the right and would have surely run her over. Instantly, Brooke tried to reach for the driver's side door. The shuffle left her fingers falling short of the handle every time as the thief driver fended her off while keeping one hand on the wheel. His free hand pressed against her face and forcing her back so she collided with the passenger door. She glanced at her purse on the passenger side floorboard. Her distraction from the fight gave Genghis Khan a chance to wrap his hand around her neck. His grip tightened, and Brooke knew she didn't have much time. She went limp, finally able to hear her children's screams and cries. The assailant loosened his grip, giving Brooke the reprieve she needed to bolt to her purse. She pulled out the one thing that could help her fight the Mongol, her gun. The click of the bullet entering the chamber cut through the wailing of her children. Before she even had to pull the trigger, the man opened the driver door and rolled out of the vehicle. The vehicle began to slow as it glided off the road and into the grass. Brooke climbed into the driver's seat and only had to press on the brakes to shift into park. Later, speaking to the detective and dealing with the paramedics, her children sat in her lap with their arms around her waist and neck. Their screams had become whimpers, but the family wouldn't separate from each other even for a moment. The thief was caught a few hours later. After retelling the story, the only response everyone had was, "That was a close one." Close is for horseshoes and hand grenades. And that night, the level of close to losing her kids, or her kids losing their mother, felt like a grenade had gone off in her chest. The only solution she could think of is to take her keys and lock her car every time she had to pump gas, at least until she was able to buy a new car with the pump on the driver's side. At 572 words, I'm pretty happy with this draft. As I've already stated, there's some things I need to work on. And what I want to work on and what I kind of understand, I know where I was headed with the Genghis Khan reference because he is known for the amount of genocide, for invasion, actually not just taking out militaries, but civilians in his invasions. So I kind of get where I was headed with that. And I think it was an okay reference, but it seems random if it stayed by itself. Be like, why the hell are you bringing up Genghis Khan in the story? It also, I feel like, is brought down when I make the reference to Mongols as a whole, as if the entire population is invasive, and it doesn't sit with me. So I can tell you right now, my least favorite line is those two references. So it's not even a specific line, it is the references, because I don't want to be that writer where I make a generalization or even have a main character that makes a generalization. Side characters can make a generalization, but there better be a purpose to it. Is it part of their characters to have those blinders on? That's where I'm sitting with that. And as much as I don't like it, I still think it's important that I see it so that hopefully in the future writing that I do in flashes and novels, I steer away from that. Now, a little lighter note, let's go with my favorite line. Believe it or not, it is not the last line. As much as I don't like gas tanks on the passenger side, it's not the last line that was my favorite. And it's kind of the line that I think is the most poetic. And yes, it does use a cliche, which I should use in my TikToks at some point. I'll write that down. But my favorite line is, it's actually two lines, is, "Close is for horseshoes and hand grenades." And that night, the level of close to losing her kids, or even her kids losing their mother, felt like a grenade had gone off in her chest. Anyone familiar with a chosen or even a familiar love of family and bond, I feel like that line can resonate with them. And I hope the cliche doesn't bring it down, but I also think the cliche kind of like sets the foundation, and then the second line brings you to have the picture of why a grenade is standing so strongly here. Because we say close is for horseshoes and hand grenades. All right, fine. This close was like a grenade. And I felt that. And I'm proud of that. I'm happy that I was able to do that. So I was still able to find joy in my writing despite some other aspects of this writing not to be strong. And I even struggled to write it in the first place. I had to do some research to help me get into the writing mindset. But I'm still happy with this draft. I would gladly have this published in a flash fiction anthology. Very happy to do it after I edit, because that is necessary. I hope you are able to find joy in any of your passions that you do every single day, every week, every month, and every year.